On the early morning of December 21, 1943, the frozen expanse of Alaska stretched endlessly beneath the wings of a B-24 Liberator, its engines humming against the bitter cold. High above the Charlie River, Lieutenant Leon Crane, a 24-year-old Army Air Corps officer born in Philadelphia on August 5, 1919, adjusted his co-pilot seat as the plane sliced through dense clouds. Stationed at Ladd Field, Crane and his four crewmates, pilot Harold Hoss Hoskin, flight engineer Richard Pompeo, radio operator Ralph Wentz, and James E. Seibert, were on a routine test flight for the Cold Weather Testing Detachment, tasked with evaluating the B-24's performance in sub-zero conditions. The mission began at 9:45 a.m., and all seemed routine until the plane radioed its position at 10:03 and again at 10:30. By 11 a.m., the crew was searching for a hole in the clouds to climb through, unaware that the open skies they sought could mask disaster. As the B-24 attempted a circling climb through what appeared to be a safe opening, the number one engine catastrophically failed. The vacuum selector valve froze, plunging the aircraft into a deadly spin from 20,000 feet, twisting toward the mountain-studded terrain below. In the cockpit, Crane and Hoskin fought to regain control, but the Liberator surged into a 300-mile-per-hour nosedive. Amid chaos and screaming wind, Crane made a split-second decision. He bailed out, plunging into the snow-covered wilderness below, while the aircraft crashed in a ball of fire that claimed the lives of his crewmates. Hip-deep in snow, dazed and gasping, Crane called out, "Ha!" for his pilot, but no voice replied. Surrounded by the raw, merciless Alaskan landscape, he realized the full scale of his isolation. The forest and mountains stretched infinitely, a world where human presence was almost non-existent. In his possession were only three meager tools: a Boy Scout knife, 2 packs of matches, and his parachute. Alone, freezing, and without food, Crane faced a stark choice: succumb to the wilderness or summon every ounce of endurance to survive. As the wind cut across the treetops and the silence of the forest pressed in, the seeds of an 84-day ordeal had just been sown, a journey that would test the limits of human resilience against the unrelenting Alaskan winter. Crane's early hours in the Alaskan wilderness were a brutal baptism into isolation. Hip-deep in snow, he called out repeatedly for Hoskin, the pilot, but the only reply was the echo of his own voice, swallowed by the vast, frozen forest. With no food, no map, and only a Boy Scout knife, 2 packs of matches, and his parachute, Crane faced a terrifying question. Could he survive here alone? The cold was immediate and unforgiving, each gust of wind cutting through his uniform and chilling him to the bone. As he scrambled to descend toward the river below, his mind raced with the stark realities of the wilderness: sub-zero temperatures, hidden ice underfoot, and a world where every step carried the risk of frostbite or death. For 9 days, Crane improvised. He wrapped himself in his parachute to sleep, coaxed fragile flames from his meager matches, and attempted to hunt squirrels, only to find himself repeatedly frustrated by the barren winter landscape. Water came from beneath the frozen river, drawn from tiny openings in the ice, and it was all he could consume. Each day was a grueling test of endurance, forcing him to ration energy and cling to survival instincts he had never imagined needing. The forest loomed like a silent predator, and the thought of rescue seemed increasingly distant. Eventually, Crane realized that staying put was no longer viable. Rescue parties, if they existed, were unlikely to find him in the sprawling wilderness. With careful deliberation, he began moving along the Charlie River, treating the waterway as a guide through the snowbound expanse. Each step was exhausting, but it provided direction in a place otherwise dominated by disorienting whiteness. His determination was unshakable. Failure was not an option. The river became both a pathway and a lifeline, offering subtle signs of game, potential shelter, and ultimately hope. Crane's discovery of the small, snow-covered cabin marked the first real turning point in his fight for survival. The cabin, built by trapper Phil Barile, was modest in size, but stocked with an astonishing array of provisions: canned food, sugar, powdered milk, a rifle, mittens, tents, and other essential supplies. For the first time since the crash, Crane felt a flicker of hope. The immediate relief of warmth and sustenance lifted the weight of near starvation, but he remained acutely aware that the wilderness outside the cabin was unforgiving and that he could not linger indefinitely. Frostbite, fatigue, and the psychological toll of absolute isolation weighed heavily on him, forcing Crane to focus on immediate recovery before plotting his next move. During the following week, he used the cabin to rest, treat his frostbite, and regain strength, carefully rationing food and maintaining a fire with the few matches he had left. Each night, the cold reminded him that comfort was fleeting, and the faint howl of wind through the trees served as a constant reminder of how fragile human life was in this frozen landscape. Courage and ingenuity became as vital as warmth and nutrition. Crane explored nearby abandoned cabins, observing the decayed structures and realizing that trappers and hunters had long relied on these outposts as lifelines. The isolation and preparation of those who came before him underscored the harsh reality: survival was never guaranteed. A crucial discovery came when he found a map of Alaska tucked away in the cabin. On it, he identified the mining camp of Woodchopper, a small settlement that represented the closest hope for rescue. Determined to make the journey, Crane began preparing carefully, constructing a rudimentary sled from wood planks to carry supplies. Each plank hammered into place was a step toward reclaiming agency over his situation. This period of planning and resource management allowed him to mentally rehearse the journey ahead, imagining the treacherous river crossings, sub-zero temperatures, and the relentless wilderness that awaited him. By mid-February, Crane knew he could no longer delay. The cabin had been a sanctuary, a temporary shield against the vast Alaskan wilderness, but beyond its walls lay both peril and promise. With his sled loaded, provisions carefully rationed, and a clear path to Woodchopper in mind, he prepared to leave the relative safety of Barile's cabin. Every step forward was a gamble against death, but Crane's resilience had been honed through weeks of hardship, and he was ready to confront the next stage of his 84-day odyssey. On February 12, 1944, Leon Crane stepped beyond the sanctuary of Barile's cabin, hauling a makeshift sled laden with supplies down the frozen Charlie River. What should have been a calculated trek soon became a grueling test of human endurance. The ice beneath him proved treacherous. Within hours, his foot broke through, freezing instantly around the muckluck he had salvaged from the cabin. Forced to spend the night tending the frostbite, he lit a fire and worked meticulously to thaw his foot, knowing that any misstep could result in permanent injury or death. Each crack of ice under his sled was a reminder that the wilderness offered no second chances. Crane pressed onward, driven by the faint but vital promise of Woodchopper. Days later, disaster struck again. He fell almost entirely through the ice, submerging in near-freezing water. Panic surged through him, the sharp sting of icy water shocking his body, but his survival instincts took over. Stripping off soaked clothing, he scrambled to shore and ignited a fire, each flame a small victory against the brutal environment. The river, once a guide, had transformed into a relentless adversary, testing not only his physical strength, but his mental fortitude. Even as he regained warmth, Crane's trials continued. A few days later, the ice claimed his sled, sending much of his remaining supplies plunging into the river. Miraculously, he salvaged a few essentials: food, the rifle, and critical gear, but the loss underscored the fragile balance between preparation and the unpredictable cruelty of nature. Each day became a struggle to stay ahead of frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion, while the vast Alaskan wilderness seemed indifferent to his presence. Crane's resilience was tested at every step, his mind oscillating between despair and determination, understanding that complacency could be fatal. Finally, after days of relentless trekking, Crane spotted the first sign of human habitation, a rudimentary landing strip carved into the frozen landscape. The sight of civilization, however distant, reawakened hope, sparking the energy to continue the final perilous stretch of his journey. Each cautious step carried him closer to potential rescue, yet the Alaskan wilderness remained a constant, silent threat, ready to punish a single misjudgment. Crane's 84-day ordeal was far from over, but the glimmer of human presence offered the first tangible sign that survival was within reach. After weeks of navigating the merciless Alaskan wilderness, Crane's perseverance finally yielded a sign of hope. On March 10, 1944, he spotted a sled dog trail cutting through the snow, a rare indication of human presence after 84 days alone. Following it cautiously, he arrived at a modest cabin inhabited by Albert Ames and his family. Exhausted, frostbitten, and weary beyond measure, Crane recounted the harrowing ordeal, the plane crash, the relentless cold, the constant struggle for food and warmth, and the weeks spent surviving on nothing but ingenuity and determination. The Ames family listened in astonishment, the sheer magnitude of his survival leaving them speechless, yet they immediately offered help, shelter, and a pathway toward the nearest settlement. Crane learned from Ames that Woodchopper, a small mining camp, lay about 30 miles away. With a mixture of relief and continued trepidation, he accepted a dog sled ride, the snow-covered landscape now guiding him toward civilization rather than threatening his life. The sensation of motion, the wind brushing against his face, and the sound of sled dogs' paws against the ice felt surreal after months of isolation. Each passing mile eroded the mental weight of solitude, replacing it with the exhilarating and profound relief of being found. For the first time since the B-24 crash, Crane could envision warmth, food, and human contact without fear of peril. Upon reaching Woodchopper, Crane was able to contact Ladd Field, confirming that he had survived the ordeal. The news reverberated through the Air Corps, bringing immeasurable relief to his family and colleagues. He even reunited with Phil Burrell, the trapper whose cabin had provided the foundation for his survival. Burrell, pleased that his foresight had saved a life, emphasized the Alaskan tradition of maintaining cabins as life-saving outposts for travelers in need. For Crane, these final steps marked the emotional and physical culmination of a journey defined by courage, resilience, and the unyielding human will to survive against the starkest odds. The wilderness that had seemed so insurmountable months earlier had tested him in every conceivable way. Yet, against freezing rivers, collapsing ice, and the constant threat of death, Crane had endured, arriving at Woodchopper not only alive, but capable of telling a story that would echo through survival lore for decades to come. The relief was profound, the danger behind him, but the memory of those 84 days would remain indelibly etched in both body and mind. After his extraordinary journey, Leon Crane returned to Ladd Field, where medical evaluation revealed a surprising truth. Despite 84 days alone in the harsh Alaskan wilderness, he was in remarkably good health, even having gained a bit of weight. The relief was immense, not just for Crane, but for his family back in Philadelphia, who he contacted immediately to assure them that he had survived. His recovery was not only physical. The psychological burden of isolation, near-death experiences, and the constant fight for survival gradually eased as he re-entered a world of human connection and community. Yet, the memories of sub-zero nights, ice-covered rivers, and the endless forest remained etched in his mind, a testament to the ordeal he had endured. Crane's resilience continued to serve a purpose as he joined a rescue mission to locate his fellow crew members. At the crash site, the remains of Lieutenant Seibert and Sergeant Wentz were recovered, bringing some closure to the tragedy, while the fate of Oskin and Pompeo remained uncertain until later discoveries confirmed their deaths. This somber reality reinforced the precariousness of survival in the Alaskan wilderness. Crane's own survival, therefore, was not only miraculous, but a beacon of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Following the war, Crane returned to Philadelphia, transitioning from military life to become an aeronautical engineer, contributing to the design of some of the earliest helicopters. His work in aviation reflected the same precision, patience, and ingenuity that had sustained him in the wild. Later, he founded a construction business with his children, demonstrating a continued commitment to building, problem-solving, and providing for family, a quieter yet equally meaningful form of legacy. His survival story, while extraordinary, became a personal foundation for innovation and leadership, illustrating how adversity can shape character and determination. Leon Crane's Odyssey remains a profound example of human endurance. Alone in the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness, armed with only a knife, matches, and a parachute, he survived where others perished, navigating frozen rivers, collapsing ice, and the relentless cold. His story is a reminder that survival is as much mental as it is physical, relying on courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding will to live. As the snowbound peaks of Alaska stand silently, they bear witness to a man who endured, adapted, and ultimately returned to life with strength, purpose, and a story that will inspire generations to come.